Arras Minerals Phase 1 drill results webinar. Pleased to be with you today. My name is Darren Klink, President and Director of Arras, and we have Tim Berry, CEO and Director, dialed in from Kazakhstan. We're going to go through a few slides, and then at the end we'll pause and take Q&A. We can do it either through the Q&A function, or providing everything is working well, we can let people in for calls in terms of just raising your hand. So we'll kick it off, and Tim's driving the presentation here this morning. So,
right. So, forward-looking statements, pretty stock standard. Right.
Yeah. So just kicking things off, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim to run through the results from the Phase 1 program. But just as a reminder, these are all focused in the Elemes project, which you can see is kind of in the middle of our license package. It's a 530 square kilometer license package, which we control 100%. And just down the road from Elemes, which is where our base is. It's about 3 hours by car east of Astana, the capital city of Kazakhstan. And you can see our license package there is all within, kind of a 2-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive from Elemes. The Boshikal operating copper mine there to the northwest of Elemes, about 60 kilometers to the northwest, owned by Kaz Minerals. And then, of course, the rest of the license package as you head down to the south.
So, just to do a quick recap on the Phase 1 drill program, we had identified over the course of a couple of field seasons, almost 9-kilometer long copper anomaly, and the 5,000 or 4,500 meter drill program that we did last year is really our first pass of drilling this copper anomaly. It does have historic drill holes in it, some of which we put holes in and around, and then some of the other drill holes are completely new, and I guess you could put them as a new discovery. So as a recap, the first drill release that we announced this year was on the 15th of January. The highlight hole was hole number 1, and that was 261 meters at 0.64 copper equivalent, starting at surface. We then announced a second news release at the end of January, where we hit 86 meters at 1.1 gram gold equivalent. And I guess you could almost just say it's gold. Very little copper, and in fact what we were seeing there it was predominantly epithermal style mineralization. And then the news release we've just announced sits up here about halfway along the copper anomaly, and that's the hole where we hit 547 meters at 0.7% copper equivalent. And I guess if you were to break that down by metal value, about half is copper and about half is gold. One of the big learnings, I guess, we figured out during this drill program is we've got quite a distinct boundary. On one side, we get very distinct and classic porphyry style mineralization, and on the other side, we get epithermal, and that's where we get gold rich, and then on the porphyry side we get copper gold. To give you an idea of scale, the distance between the first set of holes that we announced in mid-January and the hole we announced today is 5 kilometers, and there's very much no drilling in between. And then we've still got another 4-kilometer reach beyond the announcement we've had today. The last thing I'll show is the cross-section, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides, but just to position where that cross-section is, and that goes through hole 5 and hole 6, which were part of the announcement we put out today. So Going to the announcement, I think the highlight hole and the one that's certainly got the attention of the market is hole 5. That's 547 meters at 0.7 copper equivalent. And the other thing I'll highlight here is that that hole ended in very strong mineralization and classic porphyry style mineralization, which I'll explain in a second. If we look at what the core actually looks like, the top of the hole, the first almost 400 meters, was actually a breccia zone or a breccia pipe with lots of pyrite and chalcopyrite in between class of volcaniclastic unit. And that's given us some spectacular looking core and also some very, very good grade. And then once we got out of the breccia zone, we got into more classic porphyry style mineralization, sheeted veins and vein networks or boxworks. And that's what we actually ended the drill hole in. So we still don't have a good sense of how deep or how big this thing is. And then the other thing I'll highlight is we also found classic porphyry style mineralization in hole 6 sitting at surface. And again, that sort of speaks to not only do we have porphyry style mineralization at depth, we've also got it at surface. And really, it speaks to we don't really have a good handle yet on the shape or type of ore body. And that's obviously going to be part of the phase 2 drill program that we'll talk about. In terms of a cross section, this is what it looks like. There's a lot of information on here, but really the key takeaway is this is our breccia pipe that we drilled the top 390 meters through. And you can see that as hydrothermal breccia. And then once we get out of that breccia, we end up in classic porphyry style mineralization. You can see the mineralization is still going strong even at depth. And that's still open. And then we've got hole 6 where we had a very good porphyry hit, 56 meters at 0.68 copper equivalent, with the top 20 meters actually over 1%. So how exactly that fits in with regards to the shape and type of ore body is still something we've got to get a handle on. But I'm very encouraged to see porphyry sitting right at surface. The last hole, which was part of our announcement today, is hole 11. This is a map of the molybdenum anomaly we picked up in soils and was actually the target of our first release in mid-January. And so hole 1 was the hole that hit 476 meters at 0.44 copper equivalent with a 261 meter interval at 0.64 starting at surface. And then we have hole 2 and hole 3 with good copper gold mineralization. And then hole 11, we drilled right on the edge of this moly anomaly. We hit mineralization, but I think what it shows is that we're starting to define the periphery, and the real opportunity is to get into the guts of that molybdenum anomaly that you can see on the image there. And it's big. I mean, you can see the 2 kilometer by 3 kilometer scale. So the last thing I'll speak to is the Elemes license is showing this has got potential not just to be a deposit, but district hit scale as well. So this is a map showing our soil anomalies. And if we zoom into that, we picked up 2 very strong copper trends. The first is the Berezski target, which is where we've done the drilling and we've made the 3 announcements. That's 8.8 kilometers in length. And then we've also picked up a second trend called the Imandai target, and that's 14 kilometers in length. And what's important about this one is this is completely new. It has no historical drilling, and we're seeing very similar tenor to the results that we found in the Berezski target. So we're very encouraged by Imandai as well. So if I'm to speak to what phase 2 might look like, which will obviously start this year, we recognise that structure is an important part of this system, just by the fact there's a very strong northeast-southwest trend, speaks to a strong structural control. So we'd like to do a set of ground mag surveys over these targets. We'd then like to target Berezski with 20,000 metres of drilling. We think that's the kind of drilling that you'll need to do to understand the shape and orientation of the ore body. And I also point out one of the advantages of Kazakhstan is how cheap the drilling is. We're drilling for $110 a metre, $140 a metre, all in, including assay. So the bang for the buck is spectacular. IP survey over Imandai, which I think will help us refine the targets even more so. And then 5,000 metres initial drill target on Imandai itself. The last thing we'll speak to is just the infrastructure on Elemes that I think makes this an incredibly viable project. That's where the Berezski target sits. This is the town of Ekibastuz, which is where our office is based. This is the rail system. We're 15 kilometres from the rail. These are the roads in the area, and this is power. And so if I hand over to Darren, perhaps you can talk about the cost advantage of Kazakhstan.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So we did include this in our earlier webinar, but for those that are new to the Arras story, I think a couple things that we kind of want to emphasize. Number one, our overall thesis over the last 3.5 years is that Kazakhstan would firmly become a go-to place to explore and to mine. It's already a top 10 producer in the world of many of the things that we use today. And then what that's actually resulted in is we've seen more and more of the large mining companies start to establish themselves in the country over the last 3 years. In fact, the latest is this morning. It was officially announced that Ivanhoe Mines and Robert Friedland would be coming back into Kazakhstan through a joint venture earn-in with Palace Resources. So I think our overall thesis that this was going to be a place that was easy to work. You had very strong support and continue to have very strong support from the government. Tim talked to the infrastructure. It's almost unparalleled. And then the Kazakhstan cost advantage is what we talk about it. So not only from a perspective in terms of doing exploration work on the ground, where we're drilling for, as Tim mentioned, $140 a meter all in. You've got a great sort of base of geologists and engineers in this country. Lots of great universities that are turning out new students and recruits every year. And then you look at the cost structure from a mining perspective, and what this really does is it lowers the bar in terms of what you need to find, what you need to have in order to have a highly economic operation. And the Boshikal mine, which is owned by Kaz Minerals, and it's literally just down the road from Elemes, and in fact you can see there our license package at Mysore, Aktasti, and Boshikal South, completely surrounded. This is a mine that has a 35-year reserve in front of it. It's 1 billion tons of 0.33% copper, plus some gold, as you can see, 0.13 gold. So on an equivalent basis, I think it's about 0.5% copper equivalent. And in 2023, it generated $750 million at copper prices, actually much lower than where we are today. but you can see, you know, the mining costs, you know, in the ballpark of $1.30 a ton, and this is driven through, you know, 48 cents a liter diesel, 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour power. I mentioned about the highly skilled workforce, and Mining Visuals, who is a group out of Europe that put together quite a few good visuals on the mining space across all different commodities. But they put out this on the left-hand side. You can see, looking at what it costs to produce a pound of copper globally. You know, looking at the majors, the BHPs, the Glencores, the Codelcos, the Rios, the Tex, the Lundins, and you can see that across this spectrum, interestingly, a number of the lower cost mines on that spectrum show up in Kazakhstan, and Boshikal is one of those, producing copper for just under $1 a pound on a cash cost. So the sort of things that we're targeting at Elemes and these other licenses that you're going to hear more and more about here later this year as well through the Tech Arras Alliance is exactly the sort of stuff that you'd hope to find in this part of the world that can really work. Move to the next slide, Tim. So looking ahead, Tim talked a little bit about the phase 2 program for Elemes, but I think equally an important leg to the stool here is the Arras Tech Exploration Alliance. This is we entered into this about 14 months ago, and last year was a really big year for us on this. We did an enormous amount of work across the license package, which you can see there in the blue shaded areas. So there's two groups. There's up and around Boshikal, and then also package B down in the southeastern part of the tenement package. And so between 2024 and 2025, there'll be US $5 million that'll be spent and invested by Teck here. Arras is the operator. They've seconded team members into our team. And at the end of this year, Teck will then have the opportunity to select up to 4 projects, which are 120 square kilometers each. And to give you a sense, the Mesor license that you see in the top left-hand corner is about 460 square kilometers, so about a quarter of that. And those 4 projects, or up to 4 projects, Teck then has the option to invest up to $47.5 million US to earn up to 75%. But this year is going to be really important because we really turned that larger land package into a whole suite of targets. We put a release out in November that talked about all the hard work that really took place in 2024, building on some of the earlier stage work that the team did in 2023. And we're expecting that a number of these now will be prioritized and drill tested here over the next 10 months. So, for a company the size of Arras to have not only Elemes moving along with a multitude of targets, and of course more than 90% of the land package there is still untested, but to have multiple targets across these licenses now that have been worked up and will be tested and drill tested here over the next 3 quarters is quite remarkable. And so we're really excited about this aspect of it as well. In addition, the Tay project, which is to the north, you can see it's up in the northwest corner. We drilled a hole there last year. We're waiting for some follow-up analysis on that, and I suspect over the next month or 6 weeks, we'll probably have that information in and can update shareholders on that. And then lastly, just to talk about Muskoga, we've been pretty clear on this as well. We have a number of discussions going with regards to the option to acquire this. It's an option to acquire 100% for US $15 million. And this is something, again, that we would expect over the next 2 months or so, plus or minus, we'll be providing an update to the market on. So I think that brings the overall presentation part to a conclusion. We are happy to take questions. I think there's a few that are coming through in the chat, so we'll start there. And if you do have a question that you wanted to speak to, I think you have the ability to raise your hand, and we'll get to it the best that we can in order. So I'm going to, Tim, just have a look here what we've got. So in the chat, we've got a question here from Bernie. Can you provide an update on the Tech JV with respect to how much drilling they're looking to do? Any opinion on Robert Friedland moving into Kazakhstan with Palace. So yeah, I mean, I think on the last one, that's obviously pretty positive. I think again, we talked to it a little bit earlier. It kind of lends to the thesis that we have, and I think we're going to continue to see more and more interest. Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about the Czech JV? We will have some news on that here probably in a couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah. So we're just finishing up collating the data that we collected over the summer, and to give an idea of the scale of the exploration program last year, if you were to take all of Teck's exploration projects worldwide and compare them to what we managed to accomplish in Kazakhstan, I think we might have got more work done, or certainly more samples collected. So it was a very big year and great team. This year, however, is now following up those targets with the drill bit. So I would expect most of the work done under the JV will be targets, not so much to define an ore body, but just to give a first pass check to see what the mineralization looks like, and is it something that Teck will then follow up with by exercising their option to JV.
Okay, next question here from Justin. How and where will you allocate 20,000 meters across the Berezski targets? And we might want to reference, if need be, we can reference the slides as well, Tim.
Sure. I think if we actually go back here, I can bring that up. The way back. So this is the Berezski target. We know we've got mineralization in the south, in the center, and on the edges, which is predominantly epithermal. I think what we obviously need to fill in now is what's in between, and try and get a more complete picture of what's actually happening with the ore body. So I'm a big believer in being systematic about this. So we'll be looking to put drill fences across the ore body or the mineralization, do smart cross sections, and then plan the sort of drill holes after that. But for me, and I'm sure for the investor, the big question is what's happening in the middle here and up to the north, and we'll definitely be testing that with this next pass.
Okay, question here from Terrence, and we could probably refer to this slide here as well, Tim. So where are the newly released holes relative to historic holes, and were they confirmation holes? Question mark.
So you can see the black is where the historic holes are, and so no, they weren't confirmation holes. In fact, we were drilling the exact opposite direction to a lot of these historic drill holes, and we were also drilling a lot deeper. So long story short is, for two of the areas, historical drilling is what guided us there. But I think that what we'll be doing beyond that is very much the step out drilling to see how big this thing can be.
Hole 6 is probably worthy of talking at that point as well, right, Tim? I mean, that's a kilometer to the west, and actually, as you can see it on that slide as well, it actually sits outside that main geochem anomaly, and so that was quite a positive surprise for us to see a porphyry alteration out there.
And I should say the holes down here were all new, so we had no data to go on there.
Just to follow on to that one, Justin's flagged on slide 4. Are all the historic holes displayed?
Yes.
Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's maybe the one we're referring to here. Okay. Could you provide some more color on hole 10 and its difference in grade versus hole 5? Some structure in between the two, question mark.
Yeah, sure. I just move forward. So this is the table. So hole 10 is roughly 100 meters to the north of hole 5. And really the explanation we came up with and we thought was probably the most feasible is the first 390 meters of hole 5 is a breccia, and typically breccias are in a pipe, and you're either in it or you're out of it. And I think what's super encouraging for us is that when we drill through the breccia at depth, we actually got into the porphyry or classic porphyry style mineralization. So, to explain the difference, I guess, is hole 10 was quite short, and we weren't in the breccia pipe itself. However, I think that sort of just speaks to the nature of these breccia pipes.
Okay. Next one here from Chen. Do you have the location of where Teck is planning to drill this year, and when? So I think we'll provide some clarity on that probably over the next 2 to 3 weeks. As Tim mentioned earlier, we're just finalizing some of the details around it. But no doubt, we've got quite a few targets that we're going to be testing, and you can look at the release in November as a basis that will be honed in on. There's quite a few targets, both porphyry and epithermal style, that we announced in November, and as Tim mentioned, we're working through on putting a short list together here and finalizing that. Do you feel that the structural picture at Berezski is the most important factor to figure out in order to get a handle on the system? Is all the faulting you've seen so far northeast, southwest trend?
So structure is a big deal in pretty much every deposit. There's definitely been post mineral faulting that's offset mineralization. By how much, we don't yet have a good understanding, but you've kind of got to remember, I guess, these are old rocks, probably in the 450 million year old range, and so it would be surprising if we didn't see some sort of structural disruption within the system. In terms of the importance of it, I think it's obviously a control, and then it's obviously post mineral. It's offset. In terms of the direction of faulting, the predominant is northeast southwest, but there are within that kind of a northwest southeast structural set as well. It doesn't seem to be as prominent, and probably not that important.
Okay. What are the depths of the historical holes, and what volume would have been drilled within the Soviet period, if we have an estimate on that?
Yeah, the bulk of the Soviet holes are kind of 200 to probably as deep as 280 meters. It was very much a thesis back then that you had to find something within the top 200 meters for it to be viable. I've always taken the view that that's fine. It's obviously great to find an ore body in the top 200 meters, but you first have to understand the shape and orientation of the ore body itself. So for us, I've got no problem drilling deeper. And in fact, if you look at hole 5, by drilling deeper, we got out of the breccia body, which the Soviets certainly drilled into, and actually got into proper porphyry style mineralization. So, I think you can probably view the historic drilling anything below 220 meters as new territory.
Okay, and I've got a couple questions here around finance and the warrant acceleration. So yes, thanks for those questions, and we wanted to address that as well. So the company's sitting on around $1 million cash right now. As part of the financing that we did in 2024, there were half warrants as part of that, and they are exercisable at 40 cents. They do have a forced conversion provision in those if the stock trades at a volume weighted average price over 15 days of 60 cents. And based on how things have been tracking here over the last 3 weeks, inclusive of today, our expectation is that those will be forced converted, and so that would bring just over $4 million Canadian into the treasury. So you can watch for that. We'll obviously put out an announcement once that VWAP has been reached. But today's strong trading volumes, I think, will definitely help with that. And so that's an important part, because ultimately what that does is it pushes our programs into this year then, and kicks sort of any sort of additional need back into the back end of the year. But I think importantly, it's worth mentioning as well, and we have been fairly clear with folks. We've obviously had very strong support from Teck, not only through this Teck Arras alliance that we entered into 14 months ago, but they are a strategic holder, sitting at just under 10%. We've been also fairly upfront that we've been very open to and have signed confidentiality agreements with probably 80% of the world's largest copper miners and a number of the very large gold miners as well. And as we've talked about, I mean, we're seeing these companies now that are coming and establishing themselves in Kazakhstan. So it's a real positive. And a big part of that interest has been around Elemes. And so our ability to kind of maintain this project ourselves 100% and move it along, Tim and Matt and Vlad and the team have done a great job over the last 2.5, 3 years as we've done that. And no doubt we'll be having some follow-up discussions here over the next 3 to 4 weeks with these other groups, and engaging interest again. So we would be potentially open to a strategic investment. Obviously, we're going to have some good discussions with Teck as well on the back of this, and we'll see where we go. But at this point, with the warrants coming in, we're in good shape. I think over the next 4 weeks, we'll have some really interesting discussions with many of the large copper gold miners out there that have been watching us, and we've had good dialogue with. I don't know that there's any other questions. So I think really at this point, maybe we'll close off the webinar. Thank you very much for all the Q&A, folks. Again, we appreciate very much the support for Arras. It's been a step-by-step road, but we're really pleased with how things are rolling here. Of course, if you've got follow-up queries, we're very accessible via email or phone, myself or Tim. So thank you very much, everyone. Tim?
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, and greatly appreciate the support and watch this space.
Thank you.